The Ramayana, translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit of Valmiki, edited and published by Manmatha Nath Dutt, 1891. Ramayana, Ayodhya Kanda, Section 37. Hearing the words of that worthy Rama, conversant with modesty, humbly addressed Dasaratha, saying, "What, O king, have I, that am renouncing everything and am going to dwell in the forest, subsisting on what the forest yields, to do with the following? Of what avail is a person's attachment for the tether of a goodly elephant, when the elephant itself is renounced by him? Thus it is with me, O foremost of righteous ones. What shall I do with the army, O Lord of men? I will confer everything on Bharata. Let them bring me a vesture of bark, and for me who will go to the forest and reside there for 14 years, bring a hoe and a basket." Thereupon, Kaikeyi herself brought a bark dress, and that shameless one said unto Raghava in the presence of all, "Do you wear this?" On this, that foremost of men, taking those 2 pieces of bark from Kaikeyi, left his fine attire and put on the ascetic garb. And Lakshmana also, renouncing his choice raiment, put on the dress of an anchoret before his father. Then Sita, clad in silk apparel, eyeing the ascetic covering meant for her, became agitated, like a doe at sight of a noose, and afflicted with shame, that one graced with auspicious marks. Janki sorrowfully took from Kaikeyi the kusa and bark, and with tears flooding her eyes, that one cognizant of virtue and having her gaze ever fixed upon it, thus addressed her lord, resembling the king of the Gandharvas, "How do the ascetics dwelling in the woods put on their dress?" Saying this, Sita, ill at ease, became embarrassed, and putting on one piece on her neck and holding the other in her hand, the daughter of Janka, feeling uneasy, stood overpowered with shame. Thereupon that best of righteous persons, Rama, speedily coming up to her, fastened the monastic garb over Sita's silk attire. Beholding Rama fastening that goodly garb on Sita, the females of the inner apartment began to shed tears, and waxing exceedingly aggrieved, they spoke unto Rama, flaming in effulgence, "Child, do not take this virtuous one to the forest. So long as you will reside in the forest in accordance with the wishes of your father, we shall behold her, and by this means let our lives attain their object, O Lord. O son, taking Lakshmana for your help, go you to the forest. This auspicious one does not deserve to live in the woods like an ascetic. O son, grant our prayer. Let the fair Sita remain ever steady in virtue. You do not yourself intend to stay here." Hearing these words, Dasaratha's son tied the dress on Sita, having a similar character with himself. When she had put on the upper and undergarments, the preceptor of the king, Vasistha, his voice choked with the vapor of sorrow, dissuading Sita, said unto Kaikeyi, "O thou whose desires outrun thy sense of honor, O thou of perverted understanding, O befouler of thy line, deceiving the monarch, thou stayest not within the pale of the promise. O thou bereft of good behavior, that noble lady, Sita, should not go to the forest. Sita will occupy Rama's seat. Of all those that marry, the wife is the other soul. Sita will govern the earth, as she is Rama's self. But if Vaidehi goes to the forest with Rama, we will follow him, and the inhabitants of the city will also repair thither. And the warders of the inner apartment, and the people of the kingdom and the city, taking with them their accessories and servants, will accompany Raghava and his wife. And Bharata and Satrughna, wearing ascetic clothes and ranging the forest will live like their elder brother resident in the woods. Then alone thou of wild ways and intent upon harming the people wilt govern this empty earth deserted by the inhabitants, along with the trees. That can never be a kingdom where Rama is not the monarch, and that forest where Rama will reside will flourish into a monarchy. Bharata never wishes to govern a kingdom that has not been conferred upon him by his father, nor, if he has really been begotten by the monarch, will he any further act by you as a son. Even if you, leaving the earth, fly unto the air, that one cognizant of the character of his ancestry, will never act otherwise. Therefore, although intent on advancing your son, you have really brought about his injury. There exists not a person in the world that is not partial to Rama. O Kaikeyi, do you today behold beasts and snakes and birds journeying in the wake of Rama, and even the trees stand with their heads turned towards him? Do you, O noble lady, removing the ascetic guise, confer elegant ornaments on your daughter-in-law, for such a dress suits not this one. Saying this, Vasistha prevented Kaikeyi. O daughter of King Kaikeyi, you have asked for the abode of Rama in the woods, and decked out in ornaments let Sita daily engaged in adorning herself, reside in the forest with Raghava. And let the daughter of the king go to the forest, surrounded by excellent cars and servants, and taking with her attires and other necessary things. When you demanded the fulfillment of the promise, you had not your eye on Sita. When that foremost of Brahmanas, that preceptor of the king possessed of unparalleled potency, had said this, Sita, desirous of serving her beloved lord, did not turn away from the ascetic dress presented by Kaikeyi. Section 38. When Sita, having a husband although seeming as she had none, was putting on the ascetic guise, the people got into a wrath and exclaimed, O Dasaratha, fie on you! Aggrieved at the uproar that arose there in consequence, the Lord of Earth banished from his heart all regard for life, virtue, and fame. And sighing hot, that descendant de Ikshvaku spoke unto that wife of his, saying, O Kaikeyi, Sita deserves not to go in a kusa dress. Tender, and youthful, and worthy of happiness, she is, by no means, capable of living in the forest. My spiritual guide has spoken thf truth. Whom has this one injured that, being the daughter of the foremost of kings, she like a female ascetic, wearing a meager garb in the presence of all, will repair to the wood, and remain there like a beggar destitute of everything? Let Janaka's daughter leave off her ascetic guise. This is not the promise that I had made to you before. Let the princess go to the forest in comfort, furnished with all sorts of gems. My sands run out, by me hath this cruel promise been made with an oath. But this exile of Sita has been thought of by you through your ignorance, yet it not, however, consume you like a bamboo flower destroying the bamboo. If, O wicked woman, Rama has happened to do thee something unbeautiful, what wrong, O base wretch, has Vaidehi done thee in the world? Of eyes expanded like those of a doe, endued with a mild temperament, and virtuous, what harm has Janaka's daughter done thee? Surely, O nefarious one, the banishment of Rama is enough for thee. Why then dost thou bend thy mind to perpetrate these atrocious sins? O noble dame, having heard you asking for the banishment of Rama, who had at first been intended by me for being installed, and who came here afterwards, I had promised you his exile alone. But since, going beyond that promise of mine, you behold me Kala's daughter dressed in mendicant garb, surely you wish to find your way to hell. Thus commissioned to the forest, Rama, who was seated sealing his lips, said, "O righteous one, this my mother is aged and famous and of a lofty spirit. May she not meet with improper treatment at your hands. It behoves you, O bestower of boons, to show greater honor to her when she shall be deprived of me and be plunged into a sea of grief and afflicted with unprecedented woe. O you comparable unto the mighty Indra, you should so behave with my mother smitten with my separation, that exercised by grief in consequence of my residence in the forest, she may not, renouncing life, repair to the mansions of Yam." Section 39. Hearing Rama's words, and seeing him dressed like an ascetic, the king in the midst of his wives was deprived of his senses. And burning in grief, the king could not eye Raghava, nor seeing him, could that one of afflicted mind answer anything. Then remaining unconscious for a while, the mighty armed lord of earth oppressed by grief began to bewail, thinking of Rama. "I conclude that formerly I deprived many a cow of her calf, and took the life of many a creature, and it is for this that the present calamity has befallen me. I infer that life never departs from the body unless the time comes, for although sore tried by Kaikeyi, my life does not go out of me, and for I can see before me this one resembling fire, clad in the dress of an ascetic, having left his fine vesture. These people are in trouble in consequence of Kaikeyi alone, striving by help of this craftiness, to secure her interest." Having said these words, Dasaratha, his senses overpowered by the vapor of sorrow, exclaimed, "Rama," and could not proceed further. Then soon regaining consciousness, the Lord of Earth with tearful eyes, addressed Sumantra, saying, "Yoking a riding car with excellent horses, do you come hither, and take the exalted one to the south of the kingdom. The virtuous and heroic Rama is being banished by his father and mother. Even this methinks will be asserted as the fruit of the virtues possessed by the pious." Receiving the mandate of the sovereign, Sumantra, endued with fleet vigor, yoking a car adorned with horses, came there. Then the charioteer with joined hands announced to the prince that the car adorned with gold was ready, yoked with excellent horses. The king, versed in time and place, and pure, speedily summoning his treasurer, said unto him these words firmly, "Do you without delay bring unto Vaidehi excellent and costly attires and noble ornaments, counting these 10 and 4 years. Thus desired by the foremost of men, that officer repairing to the treasury, procuring all those, speedily presented them to Sita. Thereupon that pure-sprung one, Vaidehi, ordered to the forest, adorned her goodly limbs with those rare ornaments. And thus decked out, Vaidehi graced that chamber like the effulgence of the sun irradiating the welkin with his rays. Then embracing with her arms Mithila's daughter of noble behavior, and smelling the crown of her head, Sita's mother-in-law said, those women that although having always been carefully tended by their husbands, do not regard them during the incident of adversity, are in this world reckoned as unchaste. Even this is the nature of women, having formerly tasted happiness at the hands of their husbands, they, on the accession of an inconsiderable misfortune, take them to task, nay, forsake them utterly. Those women that are untruthful, unmindful, of evil ways, heartless, intent on unrighteous acts, and whose love is evanescent, are unchaste. Neither lineage, nor benefit, nor learning, nor gift, nor forbearance of faults, can secure the hearts of females, surely their hearts are unstable. But chaste women of good character, abiding in truth, acting in accordance with the precepts of superiors, and maintaining the dignity of their race, single out their lords as the prime means of compassing their spiritual welfare. Therefore, although my son is going to be banished to the woods, you should by no means disregard him. Whether he be wealthy or poor, he is unto you like a god. Hearing her mother-in-law's words fraught with virtue and interest, Sita, facing that lady, said with joined palms, I will do all that the noble one says. I know how I should act by my husband. I have heard all about that from my parents. The worshipful one ought not to place me on the same footing with unrighteous persons. As brightness doth not depart from the moon, so I cannot swerve from virtue. The winner without strings does not sound, and the car without wheels does not move. So although having 100 sons, a woman without her husband cannot attain happiness. The father gives in measure, the father and the son give in measure, but who does not worship that bestower of riches fineless, the husband? O exalted one, having learned from my superiors the principal as well the minor duties, shall I disregard my lord? A husband is a deity unto the wife. Hearing Sita's words which went directly to the heart, Kausalya, endued with purity of spirit, out of fullness of bliss and bile suddenly shed tears. Then with joined hands that foremost of virtuous ones addressed his mother, who, duly honored by all, was seated in the midst of his other mothers, saying, O mother, without indulging in grief, you should minister unto my father, and the term of my abode in the woods will shortly expire. You will find these 5 and 9 years pass away as if in a sleep. Then again getting me, you will see me surrounded by my friends and relatives. Having spoken out his mind unto his mother, Rama attentively eyed his 350 mothers. And with joined hands Dasaratha's son spake words fraught with virtue unto his mothers afflicted like Kausalya herself. If I have said anything harsh to you in consequence of familiarity, or done any wrong through ignorance, do you forgive the same. I salute you all. These calm words of Raghava informed with piety were heard by the ladies overwhelmed with grief. As Raghava was speaking thus, there arose a loud wail proceeding from those wives of that chief of men, like unto the cries of crunchies. And the abode of Dasaratha, which formerly resounded with murajas, panvas, megas, was now filled with cries of distress and lamentations. Section 40. When exceedingly distressed, Rama, Sita and Lakshmana, bowing down unto the king, circumambulated him. Then with the king's permission, the righteous Raghava, stupefied with sorrow, in company with Sita, paid respects unto his mother. Following his brother, Lakshmana saluted Kausalya, then he again took hold of his mother Sumitra's feet. As the son of Sumitra was thus engaged in honoring his mother smelling the crown of his head, thus spoke unto the mighty armed Lakshmana, although attached unto thy friends here, thou hast my permission to go to the forest. When Rama shall have gone to the woods, do not, O son, show any negligence unto him. O sinless one, whether in prosperity or in adversity, even this one is thy way. That a younger brother should follow his elder is in this world the duty of the righteous. These are the legitimate duties ever observed by this race: charity, initiation into sacrifice, and renunciation of the body in the field of battle. Do thou consider Rama as Dasaratha, and Janaka's own begotten as myself. Do thou regard Ayodhya as a wilderness. Go, my son, at thy sweet pleasure. Having thus spoken unto that dear descendant of Raghu, who had made up his mind to journey to the forest, Sumitra again and again said unto him, Go, go. Then like unto Matali addressing Vyasa, that one understanding humility, Sumantra, with joined hands humbly said unto Kakutstha, O illustrious prince, good betide you, do you ascend the car. O Rama, I will speedily take you to wherever you will tell me. You will have to spend 14 years in the forest, and your stay must commence from this very day. So the noble lady has ordered. Then having adorned her person, that best of her sex, Sita, with a glad heart ascended the car resembling the sun. Counting the term of their stay in the woods, her father-in-law furnished Sita, following her lord, with attires and ornaments. And then he placed in front of the car various weapons, coats of mail, a basket bound in hide and a hoe. At length the brothers Rama and Lakshmana swiftly ascended the flaming car garnished with gold. And seeing them with Sita for the third, mounted, Sumantra drove the car yoked with goodly horses resembling the vine in celerity. On Raghava having left for the forest to stay there for a long period, the men and beasts within the city were deprived of their senses by grief. And in the city there arose a mighty tumult in consequence of the hurrying of people, the elephants waxing mad and furious, and the neighings of horses. And the entire city containing young and old, extremely afflicted, rushed after Rama, like persons oppressed with the heat of the sun rushing towards water. At his side and back, the people bending forward with their faces covered with the vapor of grief, and sighing hard, said unto the charioteer, O charioteer, rein in the horses, do thou proceed softly. We will see the countenance of Rama, which we shall never see again. Surely the heart of Rama's mother is made of iron, for it does not burst on witnessing her son resembling Skanda repairing to the forest. Vaidehi, attaining her desire, follows her husband like a shadow, attached to virtue, she does not forsake him even as the sun forsakes not Meru. O Lakshmana, you are blessed, since you will serve your godlike brother ever speaking fair. This design of yours is great, this is your mighty good fortune, this is the way to heaven that you are following him. Saying this, they could not suppress their fears, and the men followed the beloved descendant of Ikshvaku. Then the king, his senses overcome by grief, surrounded by his distressed wives, went out of his house, saying, I will behold my dear son. He heard before him a mighty noise proceeding from weeping women, like unto the roars of she-elephants, when a great elephant has been taken captive. Thereupon Rama's father, the graceful Kakutstha, became shorn of in splendor, like unto the full moon enveloped at the appointed time during the eclipse. Then the auspicious son of Dasaratha, of soul incapable of being comprehended, ordered the charioteer, saying, Do thou proceed more speedily. Rama saying unto the charioteer, Go, and the people, stay, thus desired on the way, the charioteer could not act both ways at once. As the mighty armed Rama proceeded, the dust of the earth raised by the car wheels were laid by the tears of the citizens showering down. And in consequence of Raghava's departure, the entire city filled with despair, and uttering with their senses lost exclamations of, Oh, and, alas, became exceedingly afflicted. And the tears begot of heart's grief that flowed from the eyes of the females resembled raindrops scattered around from lotuses shaken by the movements of fish. And beholding the citizens absorbed in one thought, the auspicious monarch fell down in grief, like a tree whose roots have been severed. Then seeing the sovereign senseless and stricken with exceeding sorrow, the multitudes at the rear of Rama broke out into a loud tumult. And seeing the king weeping aloud with the inmates of the inner apartment, some exclaiming, O Rama, and others, O Rama's mother, began to bewail. Then turning back, Rama saw that his sorrow-stricken and bewildered foal hare, along with his mother, was following his track. As a colt fastened in a snare cannot see its mother, so Rama fastened in the bonds of virtue could not look at his mother openly. And seeing his parents deserving of comfort and worthy of going in a carriage, going on foot, Rama said unto the charioteer, "Go thou swiftly." And that foremost of men was incapable of bearing the looks of his father and mother, like unto an elephant afflicted with the hook, not being able to look at what is placed on its back. Rama's mother rushed after him like a cow having a calf, which has been fettered, rushing towards the fold, for the purpose of seeing it. Rama beheld his mother Kausalya running after the cart, bewailing aloud, "Rama, Rama, our Sita, Lakshmana," shedding tears for Rama, Lakshmana and Sita, and appearing as if she had been dancing incessantly. The king exclaimed, "Stay," Raghava said, "on, on." Sumantra's mind vacillated like that of one placed between two hosts burning to encounter each other. Rama said unto him, "When taxed by the monarch on your return, you will say, 'I did not hear you.' But delay will impart me terrible pain." Thereupon, doing Rama's bidding, the charioteer, telling the people to desist, made the horses already coursing, run faster. The retainers of the king stopped after circumambulating Rama, but their minds did not turn back. But the others did not return either bodily or mentally. Then the courtiers said unto that mighty monarch, Dasaratha, "He that is expected back should not be followed far." Hearing their words, the king endued with every virtue, with his body covered with perspiration and his countenance woebegone, and exceedingly distressed, stopped short and stood along with his wife looking at his son. Section 41. When that foremost of men had gone out of the city with joined hands, there arose a chorus of cries proceeding from the females residing in the inner apartment. "Where goeth he that was the stay and refuge of the friendless, the feeble, and the helpless? He that although falsely accused, used not to be moved by anger, who pacified every enraged person by renouncing things calculated to fan anger, and who felt equally for all, where goeth he? Where goeth that highly energetic and magnanimous one who conducted himself with us as he did with his mother Kausalya? Afflicted by Kaikeyi and commissioned by the monarch unto the woods, where goeth the deliverer of these people of the entire world? The senseless monarch is sending to the woods the stay of all creatures, the righteous and truthful Rama." Thus all the queens, oppressed with grief, burst out into lamentations like kine bereft of calves, and loud was the sound of their wailing. Hearing the loud tumult of lamentation in the inner apartment, the Lord of Earth, burning in grief for his son, was stricken with sorrow. And oblations unto the fire had not been offered, and the sun set, and elephants forsook their forage, and the kin did not suckle their calves. Trishanku, Lohitanga, Vrihashpati, Buddha and the other grahas getting at the moon, remained with fierce aspects. The stars are shorn of their brightness, the grahas deprived of sheen, and Vishaka appeareth enveloped in hatch. And clouds driven by the wind resembled the sea mounting the welkin, and the city shook on Rama having departed for the forest. And the cardinal points are distressed, and appear enveloped in darkness. And no planet or star is to be seen. And all of a sudden the citizens have been stricken with poverty, and no one turns his thoughts to eating or drinking. And ceaselessly burning in grief and heaving sighs, the people in Ayodhya rage at the monarch. And with their faces washed in tears, the wayfarers betoken no delight, but all are being exercised with grief. And the cool air does not blow, and no moon of mild appearance is seen, and no sun heats the world, all the entire earth is overwhelmed with woe. And sons depend not upon their parents, husbands on their wives, and brothers on brothers, and all forsaking each other, think of Rama only. And deprived of sense, and oppressed by the load of sorrow, the friends of Rama forsook their rest. Like the earth with her mountains bereft of Purandara, Ayodhya, bereft of Rama, shook, agitated by fear and grief, and the citizens with elephants and warriors uttered exclamations of distress. Section 42. So long as he could see the dust raised by the car of Rama setting out for the forest, so long that best of the Ikshvaku race did not turn his eyes from that direction. And so long as the king could discover his exceedingly virtuous and favorite son, so long he raised himself on his toes on the earth with the view of beholding him. And when the ruler of earth could no longer perceive even the dust raised by Rama's car, then pierced with sorrow, and in heaviness of heart, he fell down to the ground. Then raising him up, Kausalya held his right arm and walked with him, while the slender-waisted Kaikeyi walked by his left. Endowed with a sense of justice and with virtue and humility, the king with afflicted senses steadily eyeing Kaikeyi, thus spake unto her, O Kaikeyi, that hast decided for following sin, do thou not touch my person, nor do I wish to see thee. Thou art no wife of mine, not even a maidservant of a friend, sharing his good graces. I am none to those that subsist on thy favor, nor are they anything to me. I renounce thee who solely seekest thy interest and hast abandoned virtue. I renounce all the advantages pertaining either to this world or the next, which I am entitled to by virtue of having obtained thy hand, and having made thee circumambulate the sacrificial fire. If Bharata is satisfied with receiving this entire kingdom, let not what he spends on account of my funeral obsequies find its way to me. Then raising the Lord of men covered with dust, the noble Kausalya pierced with grief, stopped, along with the monarch. The righteous one remembering Raghava repented himself, as if he had slain a Brahmana through inordinate desire, or as if he had placed his hand in fire. And having stopped again and again, the visage of the monarch lamenting on beholding the track of the car, appeared dim like the moon invaded by Rahu. And stricken with grief, he lamented, remembering his beloved son, and thinking that by this time he had reached the precincts of the city, he broke out into the following. On the way are traced the footprints of those foremost of bearers that are carrying my son away, but that magnanimous one I do not find. And that meritorious son of mine, who, daubed with sandal, used to rest his head pleasantly upon a pillow, fanned by beauteous damsels decked in ornaments, will today surely take refuge underneath a tree, and lay his head on a wooden plank or a stone. Covered with dust, he heaving sighs will rise from the ground in sad guise, like a leader of she-elephants rising from the side of a mountain. The rangers of the woods will now see the long-armed Rama resembling the Lord himself of the worlds, rising from the ground and going like one forlorn. And that one so dearly loved by Janaka, worthy of being constantly ministered unto with comforts, is today going to the forest, fatigued in consequence of having been pierced with thorns. Unacquainted with the forest, she is certainly afflicted with fright on hearing the deep roars of ferocious beasts, capable of making one's hair stand erect. O Kaikeyi, do thou realize thy desire, do thou becoming a widow, rule this kingdom. Without that best of men I cannot live. Thus lamenting, The king, surrounded by the multitude, like one that had performed his bath after death, entered that best of cities filled with people enfeebled and smitten with grief, with its streets dined of men and its stalls closed. And beholding that entire city, with his mind fixed upon Rama, the king, lamenting, like unto the sun entering clouds, entered that city like unto an unagitated sea, rid of serpents by Suparna, the city without Rama or Lakshmana or Sita. Then with tears in his eyes, the Lord of earth, lamenting, in unintelligible accents said these sad and broken words, "Do you speedily take me to the room of Rama's mother, Kausalya, for in no other place shall I find rest for my heart." When the king had spoken thus, the ushers, taking him to Kausalya's chamber, made him lie down in lowly plight. And having entered Kausalya's apartment, the king, having laid himself on the bed, was overwhelmed with emotion. And the king surveyed the mansion deprived of his two sons as well as his daughter-in-law, like unto the welkin deprived of the moon. Beholding this, the puissant sovereign, raising up his arm, burst out into lamentations, saying, "Ah, Rama, thou forsakest us both. Ah me! Surely those blessed people are happy, who having passed this gap of time, will behold Rama returned and will embrace him." Then when the night had come like unto his own fatal night, Dasaratha at midnight addressed Kausalya, saying, "I do not perceive thee, O Kausalya. Do thou touch me with thy hand. My sight having followed Rama doth not return yet." Then seeing that foremost of men absorbed in the contemplation of Rama, that noble dame sat by him, and afflicted with greater grief, began to indulge in sighing heavily. Section 43. When seeing the king lying down stupefied with grief, Kausalya, aggrieved for her son, spake unto the Lord of earth, saying, "O best of men, having vented her venom upon Raghava, the crooked Kaikeyi will go about like a she-serpent that has cast off her slough. And that fortunate one, having by her endeavors attained her end, will frighten me the more like a wicked serpent in one's house. If Rama had stayed in this city subsisting himself by alms, or had I made my son as Kaikeyi's slave, even that would have been preferable before his retirement to the woods. Like unto the sacrificial share cast unto the Rakshasas by the sacrificers on the occasion of Purvas, that wielder of the bow, the mighty armed Rama, gifted with the gait of the prince of elephants, cast off by Kaikeyi, takes refuge in the forest in company with his wife and Lakshmana. Dispatched by you to the woods at the command of Kaikeyi, to what a plight will they, not inured to the privations of a forest life, be reduced? And bereft of elegant apparel, how will they of tender years, exiled in this time of enjoyment, pass their lives in misery, subsisting on fruits and roots? Will such a time present itself now that my grief removed and my desire attained, I shall here behold Raghava along with his wife and brother. When, hearing that those heroes have come, will Ayodhya, adorned with standards and garlands, attain fame, with her populace filled with joy. When, seeing those foremost of men returned from the forest, will the city overflow with delight, like the ocean on the occasion of a Purva. When will the mighty armed hero enter the city of Ayodhya, placing Sita before him on the car, like unto a bull having his bovine mate before him? When will people by thousands shower fried paddy upon my sons on the road? As those repressors of foes will enter the city. When shall I behold those two wearing burnished earrings, entering Ayodhya, placing before them their weapons and swords, like unto two hills furnished with their summits? When accepting flowers from girls and fruits from Brahmanas, will they, filled with delight, go round the palace? When with his intelligence ripened by time, although resembling a celestial in age, will that righteous souled one come here, rejoicing people like a Trivasha? Doubtless, O hero, formerly of vile ways that I was, I had cut off the paps of kin and thus prevented their calves hungering after their mother's milk, from drinking it. And it is for this sin that, O foremost of men, have I, attached to my son, been forcibly deprived of him by Kaikeyi, like a cow deprived of her calf by a lion. Having an only son, I dare not live without him endowed with every virtue and versed in every branch of learning. Not seeing my beloved son and the mighty Lakshmana, I cannot live at all. As in summer the divine sun furnished with fierce rays burns this earth, even so this raging fire of grief on account of my son consumes me. Section 44. As that best of ladies, Kausalya, was thus lamenting, Sumitra, ever abiding in virtue, spake unto her these words consistent with righteousness: O worshipful one, your son is crowned with all qualities, and is the best of men. Why then do you bewail thus, or weep bitterly? Since, O revered one, renouncing the kingdom, your mighty son wendeth to the woods with the view of fulfilling the intention of his high-souled and truthful sire, the worthy Rama staying in the duty that is completely observed by the good and the performance of which always bringeth welfare in the next world, should by no means be lamented. And that sinless one, Lakshmana, kind unto all creatures, will minister unto Rama in the best way possible, and this is to the advantage of that high-souled one. And experiencing the hardships that come of living in the forest, whether he deserving of happiness follows your righteous son. And what is wanting unto that maintainer of all, your son of subdued senses, intent upon truth and the observance of vows, who is spreading his banner of fame over the world? Acquainted with Rama's manifest purity and high magnanimity, the sun himself will not dare burn his body with his rays. And issuing from the woods at all hours, the delicious air impregnated with heat and cold will serve Raghava. And when he will lie down at night, the moon touching him with his beams and embracing him even like his own father, will gladden his heart. That hero of mighty energy on whom Brahma had conferred celestial weapons, seeing that foremost of the Danvas, the son of Timidhvaja, slain in battle, that tiger-like one, relying on the native strength of his arms, will fearlessly abide in the forest as if in his own home. And why should not the earth remain in the sway of him coming within the range of whose arms enemies find destruction? Considering Rama's grace, heroism and auspiciousness, there cannot be any doubt that returning from the forest, he will speedily regain his own kingdom. He is the son of the sun, the lord of the lord, he is the auspiciousness of prime auspiciousness, the fame of fame, the forbearance of forbearance, the god of the gods, and the foremost of creatures. What evil qualities, O noble lady, will be perceived in him, whether he remains in the city or in the forest? And that best of men, Rama, will soon be installed in the kingdom, in company with these three, the earth, Vaidehi, and the goddess of victory. Although overwhelmed with grief, the people of Ayodhya, seeing that noble unvanquished one retiring to the woods clad in kusa and bark, are shedding tears begot of sorrow, yet accompanied by that Lakshmi. What is there that is incapable of being attained by him? And what is there that is incapable of being obtained by him before whom goeth that foremost of bowmen himself bearing arrows, swords and other weapons? You will again see him return from the forest. O exalted one, chase your grief and sadness, I tell you this truly. O blameless one, you will again, O auspicious lady, see your son, like unto the new risen moon, paying homage unto your feet with his head. And again seeing him returned and crowned with great auspiciousness, you will speedily shed the dew of delight. O noble lady, do not grieve or lament. Evil cannot touch Rama. You will soon behold your son along with Sita and Lakshmana. O sinless one, it is for you to console these people. Why then, O revered one, do you suffer your heart to be thus overpowered? O eminent one, you ought not to bewail, inasmuch as Raghava is your son. In this world there is not another residing in honesty that is superior to Rama. Beholding your son surrounded by his friends, bowing unto you, you will soon shed blissful tears, even like a rain cloud. And soon will your son conferring boons, returning to this place, press your feet with those soft and plump hands of his. And even as a chain of clouds speaks unto a hill, you will speak unto your worshipful and heroic son, surrounded by his friends, bowing unto you. Having thus addressed Rama's mother and inspired her with hope in various words, the noble and pleasant and blameless Sumitra, clever in speech, paused. Hearing those words of Lakshmana's mother, that wife of the best of men, Rama's mother, had her sorrow destroyed in her person, even like an autumnal cloud surcharged with slight rain. Section 45. The people, who yearned after Rama having truth for prowess, followed him repairing to the forest. Even when the king in the interests of his son had with much ado restrained himself, these, following Rama's car, did not desist. That illustrious one crowned with every perfection was dear unto the inhabitants of Ayodhya like unto the full moon himself. Although besought by the subjects, the truthful Kakutstha having pledged his word unto his father, kept on going to the forest, and affectionately eyeing them as if drinking them with his sight, Rama touchingly addressed those subjects as if they were his own. The love and regard which the inhabitants of Ayodhya have for me, let them, for pleasing me, extend in full measure towards Bharata. That enhancer of Kaikeyi's delight bearing an auspicious character, will duly compass your happiness and welfare. Aged by virtue of his wisdom, although young in years, and mild albeit furnished with heroic virtue, that remover of fear will make a fit ruler for ye. Crowned with every regal virtue and selected as the heir apparent by the monarch, he is more meritorious by far than I am. It behoves ye to obey the order of your master. And seeking my good, it behoves ye to act so that when I shall have gone to the forest, the king may not grieve. But as the Dasaratha's son was bringing home to the people that their duty lay in obeying the royal mandate, they desired that even Rama should rule them. And Rama in company with Sumitra's son attracted the inhabitants of the city subdued by his virtues, who stood with tears in their eyes. And the three kinds of the twice-born ones, viz. Those old by virtue, respectively, of age, wisdom, and ascetic energy, the old folks with their heads shaking through length of years, cried from a distance, O ye fleet coursers boasting of exalted extraction that bear Rama away, do ye desist, do not go, do ye do even what is for the good of your master. And more particularly being creatures furnished with ears, do ye horses, knowing our prayer, desist. And pure of spirit and heroic and ever firm in noble promises, that master of yours should in justice be carried unto the city and not unto the forest away from it. Suddenly seeing those old Brahmanas thus lamenting distressfully, Rama speedily descended from his car. And along with Lakshmana and Sita, Rama bound for the forest, began to walk near them on foot. endowed with kindness, that friend of the good, Rama, could not by proceeding on his car bear to part with the Brahmanas that were following on foot. Seeing him thus going, the Brahmanas with agitated hearts, and burning in grief, addressed Rama in these words, the Brahmanas in a body are following thee ever seeking their good, and mounting on the shoulders of the regenerate ones, the sacrificial fires are walking in thy wake. And behold these raised umbrellas of ours got from the Vajapayil sacrifice, that like unto autumnal clouds follow at your back. With these umbrellas got at the Vajapayil sacrifice, we will afford shade unto Rama, destitute of his own white umbrella, when he shall feel the heat of the solar rays. That intelligence of ours which ever followed the Vedic mantras, is now, O child, ready to follow thee unto the forest in thy interests. That best of treasures, the Vedas, resides in our bosoms, and our wives protected by their chastity shall abide in our homes. As we have already made up our minds to follow thee, it is useless to fix our hearts afresh. But if thou overlookest virtue, what becomes of abiding by righteousness? O thou that art ever firm in virtue, we beseech thee by humbling unto the dust our heads covered with hair whitened like cranes, do thou desist. These numerous Brahmanas that have come hither have entered upon many a sacrifice. The completion of these, O child, depends upon thy return. All creatures mobile and immobile cherish thee with high regard. All these beseech thee. Do thou show consideration unto those that regard thee. Tall trees deprived of motion in consequence of being fast rooted to the earth and incapable of following thee, are prohibiting thee by sounding with the wind. And birds staying upon trees and neither manifesting any motion nor seeking for their food, beseech thee to have compassion upon all creatures. While the Brahmanas were loudly demanding the return of Rama, he found the darkness to descend as if forbidding him. Then Sumitra unyoked the fatigued horses from the car, which at once fell to rolling in the dust. And then bathing them and making them drink, he soon as the dusk set in, set fair before them. Section 46. When Raghava pausing on the banks of the Tamasa, looked at Sita and spake unto Sumitra's son, saying, O son of Sumitra, this is the first night of our exile into the forest. From this day it behoveth thee not, good betide thee, to suffer thy mind to grieve by dwelling on past joys. The empty forest resounding with the cries of beasts and birds returned to their abodes, and covered with gloom, seems to weep on all sides. Doubtless today the men and women of Ayodhya, the metropolis of my father, are bewailing us retired to the forest. O foremost of men, the people are attached unto thyself, the monarch, Bharata, Satrughna, and myself, because of our various good qualities. I bewail our father as well as my illustrious mother. I fear lest lamenting ceaselessly, they become blind. But surely the virtuous Bharata will console our father and mother with words fraught with virtue, interest and profit. Reflecting again and again on Bharata's sincerity of soul, I do not, O mighty armed one, bewail either my mother or my father. O foremost of men, that thou hast followed me is what is thy duty. If thou hadst not done so, I should have to seek elsewhere for the protection of Vaidehi. O Sumitra's son, I will spend here this night, subsisting on water alone. Even this recommends itself unto me, although the forest yields various kinds of fruits. Having said this unto Sumitra's son, Raghava spake unto Sumantra, saying, O mild one, do thou now needfully tend the horses. Then at sunset, fastening the horses, Sumantra fed them plentifully with grass, and then came back. Then seeing the night arrived, the charioteer worshipped the beneficent Sandhya, and then in company with Sumitra's son, prepared Rama's bed. And looking at that bed on the shores of the Thamasa surrounded by trees, Rama along with his wife and the son of Sumitra, lay down. When Lakshmana found that Rama afflicted with fatigue had slept together with his spouse, he began to speak unto the charioteer concerning the various qualities of Rama. As remaining awake in the night, Sumitra's son was engaged in expatiating to the charioteer on the virtues of Rama on the banks of the Thamasa, the sun arose. Rama abode that night along with the subjects at some distance from the banks of the Thamasa filled with kin. Rising from his bed, that highly energetic one, Rama, viewing the subjects asleep, addressed his brother Lakshmana graced with auspicious marks, O son of Sumitra, these that for our sake have disregarded their own homes, are still asleep beneath the trees. These citizens have determined upon making me turn back from the forest, they would rather renounce their lives than give up their resolve. Let us while they are asleep ascending on our car, swiftly go our way without fear of molestation. Attached to me, the denizens of Ikshvaku's city will not again indulge in sleep underneath trees. A prince should deliver citizens from the calamity they bring upon themselves, but he should by no means drag them into those which he himself has brought on. Then Lakshmana spake unto Rama like unto manifest virtue on earth, O wise one, even this is relished also by me. Do you speedily ascend the car? Rama said unto the charioteer, Do thou at once yoke the car. I will repair to the forest. Do thou, my master, swiftly go hence. Thereupon the charioteer bestirring himself, yoking the excellent horses unto the car, said unto Rama with joined hands, Here, O mighty armed one, is your car ready yoked, O foremost of car warriors. Do you speedily ascend, good betide you, along with Sita and Lakshmana. Ascending the car after equipping himself, Raghava crossed the rapidly rushing Thamasa abounding in eddies. Having crossed the stream, the auspicious and mighty armed one came upon a safe and goodly highway capable of inspiring even timid people with confidence. But with the view of deluding the citizens, Rama said unto the charioteer, O charioteer, do thou ascending the car proceed northwards, and having proceeded swiftly for a while, do thou turn the car. Do thou carefully act so that the citizens may not perceive this. Hearing Rama's words, the charioteer did accordingly, and having returned said unto Rama to ascend the car. Then on those perpetuators of the Raghu race having along with Sita been seated on the car, the charioteer drove the horses by that road which conducted to the hermitage. Then placing the car with its face northwards for the purpose of invoking auspiciousness on their journey, that mighty charioteer, Dasaratha's son, established on the vehicle, set out for the forest. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.